Okay, it's going live. Dalila, are we live on YouTube? It says we are. Just looking for a confirmation. Yep. Think we are. Cool. Looks like we are. Alicia, I am so excited to have you here. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to do this with you.
Me too. You're my first live YouTube call.
I know.
All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's exciting, and it's like I have first-time nerves, which actually feels kind of nice. I haven't felt this in a minute.
Yeah, it's the butterflies.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so for everyone watching, Alicia Cyrus is the host behind the Thriving in the Game podcast. This is a show that affirms, validates, and encourages Black women in tech. Yes. Alicia is a leader in the tech industry with almost 2 decades of experience driving meaningful change across public and private sectors. Alicia, 2 decades?
Almost, yeah.
You look like you haven't been alive for 2 decades.
Thank you. I'll take it.
Okay, so what I think is particularly cool about you and your approach is that, yes, in your day job, you are a leader on the tactical and strategic side of the business, but really the deeper part of your calling is around community building.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what that means and how that's connected to your show?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I've spent most of my career being an individual contributor. I think for a long time, I avoided leadership. I just didn't want to sit in meetings because that's basically what I thought of leadership.
Yeah.
But I would have to say, I think I was operating as a leader in my roles. Like I've always mentored, I've always tried to connect with people, and whether from like a mentor perspective or just, you know, however I could help them and connect them with others, I would do that. And so, you know, obviously reaching middle age, but starting to reach that point in life, I don't have children. I tend to focus a lot on legacy and what I'm giving to other people and leaving behind. And then just as, you know, I realized my influence, I had to be more of a leader in terms of title in order to help make changes that I wanted to in the workplace. And so as I shifted into people leadership, I just found that there was part of my journey that I had struggled with in terms of like finding my footing in tech. And then as I started shifting into people leadership or just mentoring people that were, you know, much earlier in their career, you know, the same issues kept coming up over and over again. And so I didn't really know how to address that problem. But obviously in the past year, having worked with you, been a part of Emerging Voices, I started to find where I could find my voice in that. Did I answer the question? I wanted to make sure.
You sure did. You sure did. And I mean, a big part of why I wanted to chat with you at this moment in time is because you just completed your first season of your podcast.
Oh my God. When you say that out loud, it's to know where we were last year. Yes, it's been a journey.
That's an impressive feat. I'm curious about what kind of feedback you've been getting from listeners.
Yeah. One, I have very supportive friends and family. You know, shout out to my father, who definitely he proofreads a lot of what I write in terms of my blog. He gives me a lot of feedback. He shares it. And then I've had other friends who have also listened, who are not necessarily in tech. And I think that's been one of my biggest compliments is that, you know, whether they're in nonprofit or HR, they are finding, you know, just there's a lot there that they're able to relate to in terms of not only just the subject matter, in terms of some of the things that we experience, but then also like how you find your footing out of that, right? Like, how do you find your empowerment? How do you start to think about making moves more strategically? So that's been a lot of the feedback, that even outside of tech, people are able to relate to the content.
Yeah.
And those in tech, definitely align with the journey and love what I'm doing and love that, we're trying. My target audience this season was early to mid-career and those who are transitioning into tech.
Okay.
And so, to have this type of content, we all wish we had it early in our career. So that's been the biggest blessing, is that people can really relate to it and then take something from it.
So you just mentioned early stage professionals and people who are transitioning into tech being your primary listener.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about identifying your listener
Yes.
in Emerging Voices. We also, even on the YouTube channel, I stress that point very, very strongly. So I'm curious for you, what was the process like? I know we have a whole lesson on identifying your listeners. Tell us a little bit, share with folks how you figured out who your primary listener was.
Yeah. So, one, shout out to Emerging Voices. You'll hear me say that throughout this. And it's not even, blowing smoke. Like, I really believe that your program is foundational in terms of helping, just align your thoughts and really figure out what you're trying to do. This was not on my 2024 roadmap, right? And so it just kind of came out of the blue in some ways. And so I think in terms of the lesson, just breaking down, understanding who I really wanted to serve through this podcast. But I think the process of interviewing is what really helped me refine what that was. Because at first it was like, BIPOC, right? I wanted, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and I was kind of just speaking to the masses, right? But I think as I, continued to interview, I started to find where I felt like my voice fit. My voice is encouragement, and it took me a while to just accept how simple that is. But it really is.
I have to ask, what does that mean? My voice is encouragement.
I feel like that's one of my God-given gifts, is just being an encourager. And that is what I felt like was missing from the conversation. So if we, kind of diverge for a second, if we talk about the Black woman experience in tech, obviously it's not all of us, right? But a lot of us do share the same experiences in terms of dealing with microaggressions, dealing with white woman tears, dealing with, your expertise, being invited to the table, but kind of like, we just invited you here for the looks. And so we know what the problems are, and you have people who focus on the problem consistently. I want to focus on that woman who is going through this experience. And if we assume that these things will probably happen at some point in our career, or will happen to someone, who's a friend or family member, now you have knowledge from women who've been down that path, and you know the steps to take, right? You don't feel that stuck feeling. You don't feel the overwhelm. Hopefully I can't say you won't feel the hurt, because it hurts. But at least you know how to solve the problem of addressing it.
Yeah.
And that for me was the affirmation. No, you're not crazy. Yes, this is happening. The validation. Yes, you're going through these experiences, and we believe you. And then finally, the encouragement. Like, here are some strategies, some tips, some tools for you to use to move beyond this situation. Whether you move to a different department, you move up out of this company, you move out of the field, like here's a way forward for you.
As you're describing this, there's such clarity and such a clear framework around how you show up as an encourager. Yeah. But correct me if I'm wrong, this came as you worked on your podcast. Is
yes,
that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so then take us back to way back when you knew, hey, this is my gift.
Yeah.
To be an encourager is my gift, but you hadn't yet created your show, and you wanted to create a show. So, like, what was the emotion that existed then? And talk to us about how you worked through those emotions to get to where you are now.
Yeah, I let me do that carefully, because like I said, I'm always working on how I craft my story. So, when we met in terms of Emerging Voices, I was on sabbatical. I had probably for the last 6 or 7 years just been I kept saying, I need a break.
Yeah.
And I really intended to take like 4 months off and then, move states and go back to work. But God gave me a year off. And I had a lot of different experiences. And part of that was I had signed up for the Artist Way, a workshop that was focused on restoring your creativity. In tech, you spend a lot of time being very analytical, very logical. And I definitely was a very imaginative, creative child. And I felt like I had lost a lot of that. I had in my 30s, in my 30s, when I say that out loud, it hurts. I went for a second master's in interior architecture and design. And then when I came out of school, I couldn't afford to practice in it, right? So even that was at one point trying to revive my creativity. So back to 2024, as I'm going through this course and just really just doing activities to help revive that part of me, then I, attended your workshop, and then ultimately through our conversations, entered into this program. And in terms of process, I just started with a lot of doubt. Again, to say, oh, I'm an encourager feels very basic. And I'm not a basic girly, but it felt very basic, and it made me doubt as if I had any validity to add to this conversation. And I think throughout the process of the different lessons of the activities around talking to people, interviewing, not only my target audience, because once I kind of was like, okay, well, I started to see like a story coming together, like, okay, we've got early career, then we've got more of your mid-career, then we've got like your leadership folks, right? So potentially that could be 3 seasons. And so if it was like, okay, if we focus on early to mid-career and maybe folks transitioning into the field, what does that look like? And so I got a lot of great feedback in my interviews in terms of what people had encountered, things that they wanted, they didn't just want to hear a voice and an opinion. What is some research? And so I do normally each episode, I would open up with kind of this, did you know? And there's a fact and figure that we kind of touch on in the interview. But it was in that process of not only doing the audience work and then starting to shape up my season is when it started to all click and make sense. And I will say that everything that I planned, because that's the gift that I also have, at least for my tech career. I'm in project management. So like, I've got the spreadsheet, I've got the content calendars, all of those things. And then you were amazing at giving great templates. So that really worked for me. And even though a lot of my episodes didn't necessarily land where I thought they would, the story was still being carried throughout each episode. So each episode kept reassuring me that, oh no, this really does make sense. Oh, this does have a place and people can connect to it. So
totally. Yeah. I think that's the creative piece of this whole experience, where you make plans. Being a producer of your own show requires that you are thinking strategically, that you have a production plan, etc. But then ultimately this is a creative project, so you don't know how each episode is really going to turn out until you start recording, and then you figure out, okay, where am I going to go from here? So I think of it really like a dance with your audience and with your guests.
Yeah, and even with your guest, right? Like some of my favorite episodes, like I said, I had an idea of where I wanted the episode to go, but as we dug into conversation, it kind of took a different spin, and it was like, oh, this is really cool. And so I think, like you said, that edifies the creative process, because it's not just this one little nebulous thing that you're like, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, and this. It's more of, here's the framework. Here's kind of what I want out of this conversation. And obviously preparing, having your questions, but then just seeing where that goes. And you can always kind of redirect, your guest back into kind of a lane, but I still love how, it's all these little different things that come bubbling up that you just didn't expect. Yeah.
My hope with this conversation is to help anyone who is an aspiring podcaster, but feels like, I don't know if my idea is good enough, or will anyone listen to this, or can I really handle the tech of it all? Like actually making my show. So that's why I really wanted to highlight your story, because you have been so open with your audience, with the Emerging Voices crew about, hey, there are things that I'm afraid of, but I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So what was the most intimidating thing to you going into this?
Oh gosh, all of it.
I have an idea. I feel like the editing was the thing you hated the most.
Editing was definitely the thing that I hated the most, although I've got a relationship with it now, but it still takes me forever.
Okay.
But I would say my fear was probably more of, again, the content, right? Like I have this idea and I know that I'm connecting with it, and I could give you statistics and I can give you my experience, but you know, is someone else going to take something from this? Like, yes, there's an aspect of I believe that I have produced something that is fulfilling to me. It is the very best part of me. Um, and in some ways I did it for me and for that younger Alicia that was, kind of struggling in her career.
Mhm.
And so for that alone, I'm good.
Mhm.
But I also know there's also that part of me was like, I want to make sure this is relatable to people. I didn't want to just spout words to the world.
Mhm.
And, obviously my season is only, 10 episodes, really 9, if you don't include my voice. I do have 5 bonus episodes dropping on May 6th.
You can catch
But
it on Thriving in the Game on all podcast
yes,
platforms.
on all platforms. But I also feel like I've put something out, like I said, in getting the feedback, people can relate to this and it's a good resource. So for that as well, that was the part that I was really, really afraid of.
When you said fear, I also remember I hope it's okay for me to share this. I remember you saying, like, what are people going to think?
Yeah.
Which I think
Yeah.
is very relatable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
How did you move through that?
I just kept working it. I had tears with Hibate. I had tears with other people. and there is community, right? Like I think we expanded beyond our group. We started hosting some evening sessions. And so it was good to see that other people were going through this process. Like it wasn't just an Alicia thing. It really is a creative process.
Yeah.
And so you have to just keep working it. And recently, obviously the buzz is all around the Sinners movie and Ryan Coogler, but I reposted this week because he says, just show up when you feel uncomfortable and just keep staying there until you feel comfortable. And I feel like that's the process that I went through. I just kept showing up. I kept doing an episode and then I would feel great about the episode and then I would struggle through editing and but the story was just unfolding and the story was consistent and the themes have been consistent and they just continue throughout all of the episodes. So I was like, oh no, like there is something here, but it probably took me getting through the first 3 to 4 episodes before I started to feel really solid, like, oh, this is a theme.
Oh, I was going to ask you about this. When
Yeah.
did you tell us, describe this moment of feeling like, oh, I'm a podcaster now?
Yeah. Well, even that, I'm still trying to own it. I'm still trying to own it. Like I think I blogged on that. I was like, I'm still like, am I a podcaster? But I think I am. I have a whole season now.
Yes. I would say your podcast would argue that you are.
Exactly. But no, it really took editing those first 4 episodes. So like my process, we'd started last year. We went through the audience, we went through the ideas and kind of detailing out the episodes. And then when I started recording, first episode was great. That was Hiwate. And then made it through the second one. And I was like, okay, I'm feeling good about this. Got to the third one, feeling great. Got to the fourth one. And it's like, okay, I see it now. I see the story being written, in the stars or in the heavens.
Yeah. And
so, yeah.
Sorry to cut you off. The 3 episodes that you just 3 or 4 episodes, this is something that I've seen with a lot of independent podcasters. So generally it takes folks 3 or 4 episodes to feel like I know my voice, I know the general themes that are coming up, which is why in the program I will give you feedback on as many episodes as you want, but nearly everyone stops asking for feedback after 4 episodes.
Yeah, yeah. And you were very focused on, or even helping us focus on just get the first episode done.
Yeah.
If you get the first episode done, that's what helps you. Um, I think another couple of things that have helped me is, so I kept trying to rush it and it just wasn't working. And then I felt like, prayed about it, and it was like, okay, February 4th, we're going. And it was like, ooh, okay, I've got 4 episodes edited, but now there's all these others.
Yep.
So, I will say shout out to Jay Wilson. My father introduced me to a lady by the name of Stephanie Wynn, somebody he used to volunteer with in Florida, and she connected me with her producer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the wonderful thing about your program is it helped me to find my voice in terms of editing and in terms of like what I want to hear as I'm telling the story, not my story, but my story. Right. And so being able to give that feedback to Jay and let him, take my episodes and elevate the sound, but knowing in terms of like what I'm looking for, like when I'm editing. So I think that was what I appreciated about this program, is just like, okay, no, okay, I know how I want to sound. I know how I want to tell this story.
Yeah.
And that was very instrumental. The other piece is, when I started, I had every intention of being like, okay, let me do every 2 weeks, maybe once a month, because this is a lot of work. And
Yep.
you were like, no, you should really do weekly. And I was like,
Well,
oh my God.
okay, in
Oh
my
my God.
defense, I recommend weekly so that people don't forget about you, but also because you have a set season. If
Yeah.
you were making an always on podcast,
Yeah.
I always say this, like, nothing in nature is always on, and we
Yeah.
should not be on all the time. So
Right.
because you're making a seasonal podcast, it doesn't make sense for you to come out with a new episode every month, because
Yeah.
then it's like 6 months in and we've only heard from you 6 times, you know?
Right.
But this way, now, not only are you done, you're talking about season 2, which we'll get to in a second.
Yeah.
But
But that made all the difference, right? Like, because there was a point where like I had the first 4 episodes and then it was like, oh snap, I got to do the rest of them. Like, a lot of the interviews were done, but I still had a few interviews and then they still needed to be edited.
Yep.
So doing weekly, I didn't have time to think about, we didn't have time for doubt anymore. It was like, get this thing done, get the show notes done, get the artwork done. You got to plan out your social media. I didn't have time to think about it. So once I started and went full force, I didn't have time for doubt, other than like, okay, my intro, but comes a point, it's like, look, do you want this done or not? So like, it was like, get it done.
Done is better than perfect is 100% part of what you have to embrace.
Yeah.
You mentioned Jay and hiring an editor, but you had already learned to edit yourself. Talk to us about the decision to hire out, because I'm sure some folks watching are wondering, do I need to pay for an editor, or can I really do this myself?
Yeah, I think you can totally do it yourself. I think, again, because I've gone through your program, I know the resources that you've provided. You provided voices that come in, people that come and talk to us. So, and you also have the list of tools, and you help us out in sessions and things like that. So, that for me was extremely helpful, because then, like I said, now I know how to do it. So it wasn't so much a matter of, oh, I don't know how to do it. It was like, okay, I need to accelerate this and get it done. So again, I took most of last year just focused on the first 4 episodes. Now, obviously, if I could have had more done, then yeah, I might have been a little bit more comfortable just releasing on my own. But once I decided to go full force, like, there's no way, because now I'm back working full time. So like last year, it's like, I could stay up all night and edit and wake up at 10 or 11. Now it's like, no, I have somewhere to be. So, I needed the help. It really is what it was. And, I do feel like, because he has a audio visual background, like for me, I'm a phonics, or I don't even know. I guess it's phonics. I'm hearing and sensory is very big to me. So, I do feel like there was an elevation to my sound, but I do feel like, in terms of the way that I was taught, being able to edit into script, or, some people I think use Riverside, but like being able to edit in the tool, I know how to do that. And so I'm grateful that I know like my voice. I'm grateful that I know how to, do a lot of the editing and the smoothing and getting the flow of conversation that I want.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it's a personal choice in terms of if you choose to invest in bringing somebody in to help you.
So you also talked a little bit earlier about your podcast art.
Yeah.
Did you make that yourself,
I
or
did.
you did? All right, let me see if I can actually pull it up to show everyone what it looks like. It's
Oh
beautiful.
gosh. Thank you.
Um, so tell us about the process of actually making your podcast art while I pull this up.
Yeah, so that was another lesson, right? So again, you have been excellent at all the things that you need to consider with, creating a podcast. Because if I think had I done it on my own, I would have stopped. And that's just being honest. But in terms of the artwork, it really started as kind of like, well, let me mock up an idea. So I think in the lesson it said, go find some different examples of what you like. And, I always refer to my baby daddy without the baby, Trevor Noah. I love his artwork. I love Lavia Jai. I love Kieran Yaliswa. I love a lot of different artwork, but I knew for me, my style tends to be more minimalistic with a little bit of flair. And I had done a shoot because I needed some professional headshots last summer. And so blues tend to be my favorite color. I love the relaxing part of it. And so I was like, well, let me just play around with different colors. Let me find some backgrounds. And then all of a sudden this, I had some different things emerge. And then fortunately I was able to share them, with our cohort and just get some feedback and landed on artwork. It just kind of worked. It clicked. So it went from being a mock-up to being like, oh no, this is my podcast art.
Yeah. So like for everyone watching, this is what Alicia's podcast art looks like. So for this to come out of you playing around in Canva, I think is really incredible. Very, very cool.
Yeah. I'm very proud of it. I think if you look at it on screen, you can see a little bit. There's a little bit of stuff in the background, but I mean, it literally was just playing around and then getting feedback and then like, oh, okay, we're going with this.
Looks great. Good job.
Thanks.
Okay, so I know you said you still don't quite feel like a podcaster.
Yeah.
I am curious as to what you think it would take for you to feel that way.
I don't know. I was thinking about that. I was like, oh, why is it so hard to just say it? I think I'm gonna go back and update like my LinkedIn and my IGs and just put it on there and just call myself that. I definitely see myself as a creator. I've always felt like a creative in whatever way that was. But I think once I'm able to get to a place where I can just settle into one role, it'll be easier to call myself that. Because, I'm a little bit of a producer, I'm a little bit of a host, I'm a little bit of an editor, and I guess technically that's all podcasting. So yeah, maybe season 2.
Yeah, and part of why I ask this question is because I think we sometimes feel like if we don't fully assume the identity, we can't do the thing.
Yeah.
And actually, you're proving that you get the identity by doing the thing.
Yes. Yeah.
So on this topic, your launch was really beautiful. So you created this incredible artwork, and then you very consistently wrote newsletters, you posted on Instagram, and you took us along the journey of actually making your show.
Yeah.
Before we ever heard the first episode.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about where you found the time to do all of this and how you did this so consistently and meticulously, because it was really beautifully executed.
Thank you very much. I think I think you also highlight in our lessons how, obviously you have to build your audience, right? You have to build momentum for this idea. And I knew the only way to do that was consistency. So sometimes it was like, okay, we're going to be done by Sunday. And sometimes it was like, it's 2 a.m. Monday, but this is going to be live at 10 a.m. And so I don't care I don't care. I think I only had one episode where I was up to like 4 a.m. And then I was like, but that was just, a mix of different things going on.
Mhm.
But,
Mhm.
and even now, like because I'm still in the midst of editing, like it's been hard to like kind of do both at once, of like blogging and then also doing that. So I do intend to be more consistent once I get these episodes out. But I just had to commit. Like there's some things that helped. So I forget who has it, but it was a content calendar template, and that was helpful for me in terms of like planning out the social media, because I was intentional every day, 10 a.m. or sometimes 12, or like maybe in the afternoon, I would drop a new uh,
What's it
post
called?
on my feed. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then I would also mix in stories. So I use Buffer to plan that out.
Okay.
I use the free version because you can do up to 10.
Okay.
But being able to plan that out was also helpful. And so then same thing in Canva, like I have everything planned out, and then go and put that into my content calendar in terms of like what I want to say, keeping the messaging kind of consistent, having the hashtags and all that good stuff. And then I could just copy and paste into Buffer like Sunday or Monday and just have it go out. And then if I ran behind, I would at least try to do 2 or 3 days in advance. But it was just commitment. Now, I also made the decision purposefully that I wasn't going to blog during this time.
Mhm.
Like my drops were every Tuesday at 10 a.m.
Mhm.
And I could not do both, right? I could not write. And for me, I this morning I was thinking about it, and I was like, I call it creative overwhelm.
Yeah.
I couldn't focus on all those different areas.
Yeah.
So, we'll write later, but like if I have great show notes and I've got the episode and that's consistently dropping, I think that was my focus. So, yeah, just had to get it done. There was no, I didn't give myself room for excuses.
This is so interesting for me to hear you say this, because I remember maybe, I don't know, a couple months into us working together on your show,
Yeah.
I remember being like, okay, so where are you at with episode 1? And you're like, I've given up.
You're not wrong. I was like, I'm tired. I can't.
Yeah.
I
And
can't.
I think what's really powerful, one of the many things that's really powerful about your story, is the fact that you continue to show up even when you wanted to give up. You rested, you
I did.
paused, you took
Yeah, I
breaks.
took all of May off. I did nothing.
Yeah.
I think I joined calls, but I didn't do any work.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, like you said, I took some rest, but I kept showing up. And I will say, Huete knew that it was going to come. I was still pretty doubtful because I think I was also, again, in that space of trying to do too much. And I
Mhm.
remember we had a really good conversation about just focusing. Again, go back to episode 1.
Yeah.
Let's just get this done. Let's just edit this. Let's just write the intro for this. I think we had a trailer in there, and that helped too. Once I had my trailer, even though I think initially I was like, it's not the greatest, but it made it more real.
Yeah.
And it made it like, oh, no, I can actually do this. Just, girl, keep going. I have to talk to myself like that sometimes.
The reason I bring this up is because I think there's this narrative of what consistency looks like in the mainstream, which is you show up every day, you grind, you work through it, and you get this incredible result. And I actually don't think that is realistic. And that's why most people give up on their creative ideas, because they're not able to show up that way. And then they think, if I'm not able to show up that way every day, then what's the point?
Yeah.
And actually, you're proving that showing up in whatever way you can show up. Sometimes it's just being part of the community and staying close to it. Sometimes it's actually staying up till midnight and finishing the episode. It looks different every day, but the fact that you are consistently staying committed to the vision is really what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I mean, and you talk a lot about creative resilience, which I do. I connect with that idea because that's what I was trying to say earlier. There is no controlling creativity, right? It's a flow. And I think having the artist way, that helped remind me of that it is a flow. Sometimes I'm in the flow, sometimes I'm out of it. Sometimes you have to step away so that you can get back into it. And then I had little activities, right? Like if I just could not think the words, then I just stayed in Canva. Like, let me keep planning things out. Because at least that was colorful and I could play essentially. And
Mhm.
then it was like, oh, well, let me go back. Okay, well, let me write this part and I'll
Mhm.
just focus on this part. So I do think it's, creativity one is not something you can control. Yes, you have to be consistent and kind of focus, but um, I think I'm someone who definitely always has to remind myself to give myself that grace of it does not have to be the same effort every day, same
Yeah.
time, same grind. Like,
Yeah.
you were like, okay, put blocks. Like, okay, edit for a couple hours, go do something else. And so that helped me for a little bit. But yeah, a lot of it was just like sometimes I just had to step away from one thing and do something else for a little bit. But I tried to balance it because I like even my business coach, Lindsay, she always tells me like something gets hard, then I just focus on something else.
Mm.
And she's not wrong.
You're
So,
talking about something very important right now, Alicia. This is
yeah.
true for so many of us because we want to avoid the pain. So
Yes.
we will like disassociate from the current experience and just
Right.
go escape and do something else.
Yeah.
Training yourself to stay in the discomfort is a skill. Like you're
Yes.
building a muscle.
Yes. Yeah. But I think it does look a little different in terms of, like you said, staying within the vision, right? So it's not like, okay, I'm not going to do podcasting right now. I'm going to go do this over here. It is still the podcasting, but okay, if I can't really think the words to frame up my episode the way that I want to, let me go work on the artwork
Yes.
because the artwork is still a part of it. That's going to be sometimes that sparks, a thought, or
Yep.
let me go edit because as I'm listening and editing, that helps me frame up what I want to say, right?
Yeah.
There's something new. So I would just go put stuff in Notepad like, okay, oh, he would taste at this. Let me put this over here. And so then eventually I'm done with the episode
Yep.
and now I've got enough to like rewrite and kind of come up with my intro because I would lean on like maybe Chat GPT for like titles, but like the content was me and it was listening to you and kind of framing my idea and letting it just kind of pour out of me and in whatever way or shape that was. So
You are touching on something really important, which is like the creative process looks different for everyone.
mhm.
And actually, I had a boss who, like, sometimes I'd call her in the afternoon and be like, "Hey, what are you working on?" And she's like, "I'm actually painting my fence in the yard." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Excuse me, aren't we supposed to be working?" And actually, this was just her like taking a moment to
Yeah.
integrate or to process what she had heard or thought about earlier in the day. And
Mhm.
that goes so strongly against the common narrative of what is productive that I
Yeah.
think most of us have a hard time stepping away and still holding the vision.
Yeah. But I learned that in the artist way. I mean, and also with you again, because you focus on creative resilience. And I think you were very graceful and patient, maybe sometimes with, I
I felt
think,
I had to be patient. I honestly
well,
knew
good.
this is the process for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think because you reiterated that, I even in the moments where I was just really frustrated, I felt like I was still in the process. It was more of like, okay, I'm gonna just leave and go to a coffee shop, or I'm gonna go walk around and look at antiques and just take a beat to like just let my thoughts settle. Cause I think, at least for me, sometimes it's like I'm trying so hard to get it. So I'm hammering and I'm like, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna sit here until I get it. And it's like it's not working. So
Yeah.
just stop.
Yep.
Just stop. Whether you go color, whether you go, go play in Canva, whether you go paint your fence, do something to just walk away for a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Something that you got significantly better at over the course of your season
Mhm.
is how you delivered your intro. Because the first few
Mhm.
times you were like, I sound like I'm reading. And so
Yes.
we worked on that. Tell us
Mhm.
about how just that specific thing, like, how did you sound less and less like you were reading when you would read your intro, read your outro? Because you don't
Mhm.
sound like you're reading when you're hosting. You've never
Thanks.
sounded that way. I've told you
Thank
this from
you.
the beginning. You were such a natural that I didn't really have to coach you, and that's
Thank
a
you.
big part of what producers do, right? Our job is
Yeah.
to coach talent on how to sound more natural so that they connect with their audience. But you did that supernaturally. So let's talk about the part that was a little bit harder for you. How did
Mhm.
you learn to sound natural in your intro, even though it was written?
Well, thank you, because I'm always like, I'm trying to get better, and I, you don't know how you sound until, somebody else kind of gives you feedback.
Yeah.
Um, Honestly, just practicing, because I think that's something that's very personal. I think some people are very off the cuff. I think in conversation, I can definitely be off the cuff, but um, again, because I'm going into these interviews with trying to elicit something, and not in a manipulative way, but I'm trying to, I'm asking questions to get this story that I want to, hopefully resonate with what I think the theme is, but also pull out, whatever else the story is there. So for me, I will write my intros and then I do them several times. And now you also advise to, like, break it up. I can't break it up, because then I can hear in my head, like, oh, I recorded that last night and I recorded this one this morning. I sound different. So for me, it literally is sitting there going through the whole thing every single time.
Mhm.
That's my process.
Mhm.
But I think over time and just getting more and more used to, um, just riffing as I read it, right? So it's like I have something there. Sometimes it's exactly, sometimes it's not exact. Um, but also trying to work more of my personality in, which is a little bit goofy. Like, that's just me, and I'm
Okay.
okay with it. But like, I want to be professional, but I don't want to sound like your therapist,
Yeah.
even though sometimes my voice sounds that way. But like, that wasn't what I think I just kept practicing until I got to the voice that I wanted to convey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just brought up something when you said, I don't want to sound that way.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about the gap between your skill level and your taste level, which is something that Ira Glass originally talked about many years ago.
Mhm.
Um, do you see that gap closing episode over episode?
Yes, I would say, yeah, because there are things that I want to continue to work on and want to get better at, but I don't want to take away from the progress that I've made.
Mhm.
So yeah, I definitely see that gap closing as I get more comfortable. Like, I can hear, even in different interviews from the ones that I did last year until this year. Sometimes it's just more comfortable because either I know the person, or I don't know, we just connect, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then sometimes I could just hear more of my nerves, or I could hear more of, like, because I wasn't in the same location every time, every episode. So there is a little bit of that too. Um, but over time, I've been in a consistent place for the last few months. And then also just getting more comfortable at, like, asking questions. And I still have, like, my script, but like being able to, like, riff a little more, I think has been something that I've gotten better at over time. There's still a little bit of things. Like I said, I was still like, I get caught up listening to people. So I'm
Yeah.
glad I'm edited, because it's like, and then I'm just sitting there like, wow. And I'm like, oh gosh, I've got to find some, like, standard things I can reply with. But yeah,
No,
like
but
I
I think
said,
that's good. That's good. Like, not, what a lot of people do, myself included, is our default reply is, "Oh, love that,"
yeah,
or "So interesting."
I
And
love it.
no, that sounds disingenuous when it happens over and over again.
Yeah, yeah,
But to just be quiet and fully engrossed in what someone else is saying,
yeah,
I think is actually a really powerful thing.
yeah, yeah.
So for anyone, maybe this is like for the version of you before you started, but
Hmm.
really I'm asking this on behalf of anyone watching this who is thinking, God, I have such a good idea, but
Hmm.
I'm just scared, or I
Hmm.
think I might have a good idea, but I'm
Hmm.
scared. What advice would you give that person?
I mean, one, I would definitely recommend your program. I think it's fully worth the investment. And again, not blowing smoke. For me, this was a very transformative process. In addition to the Artist Way, in addition to working with my business coach, like, it was like everything was what I needed at last year, and beyond. Um, But I think if you're still trying to figure that out, I think you just work the idea. Think about like, okay, this is a great idea for me. And okay, what would that look like? Who would you be talking to? Right. So again, like you said, start with your audience and then maybe talk to people who, are in your ideal audience. See what they think of the idea, or maybe not even the idea, see what kind of questions come out of that idea.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so for me, I know I want to affirm, validate, and encourage, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, for me, that translates into what are strategies, tips, and tools for navigating different difficult situations, navigating feeling like I don't belong, navigating all these different things, right? So you've got to figure out what your idea translates to. And I think you said this as well, as like, in some ways, like, what problem are you trying to solve? Like, if you put this out there, what are you addressing? So I think if you start there and then find some people that you can kind of ask questions around and see if it kind of fits, and then maybe start to map out your first few episodes. What does that look like?
Yep.
Because I think when I first started, you reminded us, like, you don't need like tons of episodes. It's not a TV series. We're okay. And I think I started actually with 12 or 14. And then over time, it ended up working to be 10, which I was good with, because I felt like these 10 episodes told the story of what I was trying to communicate. And I think if you can get to that point of where, like, this idea kind of solves this problem and it answers these questions, or it speaks to these questions, and I can create conversation around that, and blogs maybe around that. And then if I, break this down into however many episodes, 10, 11, 12, okay, maybe I can tell this story the way that I want to. And I think that is somewhere you can start. Don't try to take everything. Don't start focusing on equipment and editing and all the things, because if you do, you'll just get overwhelmed and you'll stop.
Yeah.
But just start with your idea and just work it from there. And then know that doubt is going to come. It's just, make it your friend. It's going to be a part of this whole process. Like I said, I shed tears. I had conversations, all of the things, but like, I stayed with it.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I would be here last year, but I am.
Here we are.
Here we are.
I do think people forget that emotions are part of the creative, like doubt, anxiety, worry, all of that is part of the creative process. In fact, what we consider creativity is the expression of emotions, or the expression of stories which elicit emotions. So it would only make sense that big emotions come up as you set out to create something new.
And like you pointed out, like, even though a part of me was like, yes, I was very focused on wanting to put something out that people could relate to and connect with, focus on what you feel about the idea first. Does this make sense to you?
Yep.
Does it tell the story that you're trying to convey? I think in doing that and focusing on the story and less on like what I think about the story, that also helped a lot too. Because it was like, no, every episode is reiterating, okay, these are the themes that I can pull out. Like, oh no, this really does make sense.
Yeah.
But I didn't think that before the first episode. I wasn't sure where it was going to go.
So now that you are done with your season finale, I know you have some bonus episodes, but you're going to start thinking about season 2.
Yeah.
What should we expect from season 2?
So in season 2, like I said, this first season was focused on early to mid-career, transitioning career women. It's that next step, right? And how do we start to shift from mid-career to that first level, maybe management level? And so I definitely want to feature stories that speak to that experience, how you prepare for it, what are some of the things you're going to encounter. Again, kind of like from my own walk, and then from other girlfriends in the industry, and different people that I talk to. What does that look like? I fully intend to start the process again of like walking through my audience and trying to find that connection. Because again, like I said, I purposefully do not want to stick in, I guess, the mire or the mud of these are the things that we deal with. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's part of the walk that you're going to walk in probably in any environment, but definitely corporate and definitely tech, where it's
Hmm.
very heavily white male dominated. Um, I want you again to have solutions. I want you to be able to relate to the content, but also like, okay, if you're there now, like I'm 7 years in, I'm thinking about leadership. What is that? What do I need to do to get there?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How do I manage and navigate and kind of deal with all the stuff on the side, but stay focused on my goal? Um, so yeah, that's what season 2 is looking like.
What I think is very cool about that is you are actually not targeting a new audience. It's the
Mhm.
same audience evolving with you. So you're
Exactly.
evolving with them as they grow.
Yeah, yeah,
Should we expect newsletters in between seasons? Will you
yeah.
be sending out newsletters on your
Yeah. The goal is to get to May 6th and all 5 of those episodes will drop at once on the same day. So you'll have some good content to carry through for a while. But I've also had some challenges, right? Like someone on this call has challenged me to focus on video. I would say
I'm that someone.
that you are that someone. I've had friends and some other folks who have pushed me to think about creating a workshop around this, and maybe looking at some conferences and speaking. My father's pushing me to write a book, and I'm like, I don't know, it's a lot,
Yeah.
but I think it's good because I think it means that my idea is resonating, and so I'm happy about that, and I'm open to wherever that leads. Um, but yes, definitely there will be some blogs. I do want to go back kind of through the season and dig into some things. Obviously, when you're framing up a 30 to 45-minute conversation, there's a lot that gets left out.
Yeah.
But I'm very focused on like community building. I don't quite have that yet, but I do want to build that. I want it to be eventually a place of conversation. If we're talking about belonging and how we redefine that, what does that look like? We talk about values. Karen, um, as part of the show notes, I share out her values worksheet. I'd love to see a conversation around that. And maybe even, maybe experiment with video and have some live conversations where we're just talking about the season. But
Mhm.
yeah, definitely want to keep some consistency because the goal again is it's not just my voice, right? It is my voice and my experience, but I share that with many other women. And so I want you there and talking about, yeah, here's how I handled this, or raise your hand, like I'm going through this now. What do I do?
Need help.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I want to create that space for women.
I am so excited to see season 2 coming out. I have to highlight some of the commenters who are here. Pixel Inch says, taking notes throughout for my podcast. Love
Hmm,
to hear it.
awesome.
Is hi everyone. Thanks, ladies, for this. Very helpful. I'm watching on my TV. Love that we're on somebody's TV right now.
Yes.
Talk the Street says, I agree. Doing it for your younger self is such a great why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Simone says, I love the acknowledgement that you did this for you and that was enough. So
Yeah.
powerful. We all deserve the space to do something creative for ourselves.
Yeah. Really do.
Alicia, thank you so much for making time for this. This has been such a lovely conversation.
Thank you for having me. I love being your first conversation and I obviously love you and just being here and being a part of your program. It has been life-changing and I'm very grateful for it.
That is incredibly validating. You have lifetime access to the program, as does everyone else in Emerging Voices. So I love that this is not going to be our last conversation.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Awesome. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.